Social Music Talk. Social Music Talk. Thanks for joining us. Alex Cosper with producer Sam Kadura.
That's right. That's right.
Here we are in late May 2019, and believe it or not, it's the 30th anniversary of the song I put on the radio on KWOD back in 1989 that I wrote called Waves on the West Coast.
You know what? I remember that song so well. That was one of my favorite songs that summer, believe it or not.
Wow.
And I'm not just saying that because I know you personally, but because it was a cool little record, man.
You had to have been in Sacramento to know this record because that's the only place it was played back in the summer of 89. So we're going to listen to it. You have it all queued up, right?
Oh, you want to hear it right now?
Yeah, but first let me give a little background on it. It was recorded in the spring of 89, and the reason we recorded it in the first place is, I wrote a song once I went to Hawaii, and I enjoyed it so much. It ended up being a song about the West Coast, even though it was originally about Hawaii. So,
well, Hawaii's off the West Coast.
That's true.
Kind of.
You can argue that
it's not on the East Coast, that's for sure.
So anyway, I enjoyed Hawaii so much, specifically Oahu with Waikiki and Honolulu.
Oh, I love Hawaii.
I had to write a song about it, and it was around the time that Kokomo by the Beach Boys was a big hit. They made a comeback with that song in late '88.
That was a huge, huge hit. I loved Kokomo. You know what? Kokomo was even better than Waves on the West Coast, in a way. At least the recording was.
Fans will agree with that. But anyway, the reason I created the recording of Waves on the West Coast without knowing how to sing or do anything in the studio, I just had written a lot of songs by that point. I just had never recorded anything before, and I wanted to see what would happen if we played a local song on the radio, if it would get any kind of reaction.
Right.
Because my job at KWOD for a few years was, in the beginning, working for Mr. Ed, the music director. I would call record stores like Tower and ask them for their store reports, like what was selling that week.
Right.
And I was curious, did it really take airplay to get records to sell? And usually it did. So I wanted to find out if we could put a local record on the air, if it could get any sales or any kind of reaction. That was the whole thinking behind Waves on the West Coast.
That's an interesting way to birth a song in a way.
Yeah, and I also wanted to see what could happen with a summer theme, because the summer theme had kind of disappeared in pop music toward the late 80s. You had stuff in the mid-'80s, like Walking on Sunshine by Katrina and the Waves, but you didn't really have a lot of that summer-type music in the late 80s, and so that's what I was going for. Anyway, I guess we'll check that out right now. Here it is, Waves on the West Coast from 1989.
So empty, everyone enjoys the heat. still get a tan.
There it is, Waves on the West Coast. Tangent featuring AC and Harrison Price is how it was billed in 1989.
Just Tangent?
Yeah.
And it was on Stress Free Records,
Yeah,
I think?
I came up with that name.
Right, I dig that name.
Yeah.
I remember that. And then Tangent became Tangent Sunset.
That's
or
right.
Sunrise or
Sunset, yeah.
Sunrise, Sunset, Tangent, you bet.
Yes, so that was my Bay Area name. Now I've shortened it even more to Sunset Trip.
Oh, cool.
That's my Southern California band name.
Well, I tell you what, man. Why don't you talk a little? I'm hanging out with the Dream Maker, getting ready for my show coming up at 4:00. It's Ubong 420 right here on WSRadio.com, and I'm going to be back in about 15, 20 minutes. So, can you handle the show solo for a little while?
Definitely, yeah. I'll just talk about that song and the anniversary of the song and why it matters.
What year was it again?
1989.
So it's the 20-year anniversary.
30-year anniversary.
Holy cow, 30 years.
The 80s, man. That was a long time ago.
Holy cow. That's insane, man.
Yeah.
It's good to hear it again, though. All right, man. Hey, have a good segment. I'll be back in a little while.
You got it. All right, Sam. Thanks. So anyway, Waves on the West Coast was out in the summer of 1989, around the time of Full Moon Fever by Tom Petty. I Won't Back Down was a hit on KWOD at the time. And so we were actually going through this identity crisis on the air. As you know, radio stations try to take on a certain identity and stick with the same kind of playlist over and over and over again. Well, KWOD at the time was going through an identity crisis. It had been a top 40 station for many years, but in 1989 it was losing that identity in the sense that top 40 was rapidly moving toward different sounds, like urban sounds, than what KWOD had been playing. KWOD was kind of a pop rock station, but you see, by the late 80s, the top 40 was starting to lean more like female dance music in the direction of Madonna and a lot of female groups of that era that weren't even groups. They were just thrown together by record labels. And a certain sound was being pitched, and the pop sound was becoming more and more of a teen sound and just a dance sound, like a nightclub party sound. And so that's why certain stuff of the past didn't fit in that much anymore. It was amazing that Kokomo by the Beach Boys could be number one in late 1988. And that songs like Red, Red Wine by UB40 could be big in 1988. By 1989, the top 40 was starting to be flooded with more of the more rap type records. Wild Thing by Tone Loc and those kind of records, Bust a Move, Young MC, and you just had a lot of more the club sound taking over top 40. So I wanted to see if something more retro, but also timeless, could do well on the radio. And that's why we pursued Waves on the West Coast, a song that I thought would be a good summer song, good upbeat, happy tune. Plus, it contrasted the many ballads that were out at that time. It was becoming like lots and lots of ballads because it was obvious that was how to have a number one record. So you had a mix of dance records and ballads dominating the charts. And so you didn't have as much variety anymore on top 40 radio. It all kind of went for a certain formula. So my idea of Waves on the West Coast was kind of take a retro theme, kind of Beach Boys oriented, mix it with summertime, and make it upbeat, and don't worry too much about all the trends going on. Let it be part of the variety that happens. So that was the whole thinking behind Waves on the West Coast. And there was a guy who hung out at the station named Harrison Price, who was a friend of a guy named Rick Neal there, who I got a job at KWOD. And so that little circle of people is kind of how the conversations developed as to how the song would be recorded. And keep in mind, it was written and I recorded it, my own little demo at home. And I didn't at all think when I was recording it at home that it would ever be something that ended up on the radio. But that demo is what I took to Harry to play at his recording studio. And he figured out an arrangement based on my demo. And he listened to my advice about how I wanted it to have a sound kind of like the group Information Society, who was popular at the time with a hit called What's on Your Mind. And they just had a really cool modern sound, and that's the sound I was going for. So he understood how to play that on keyboards, so he did a keyboard arrangement for it, and he played the drums on octapads. So he was actually playing, electronic drums as if he were playing live. It wasn't just programmed beats. He was actually playing those beats. And it took at least a couple months to record all the tracks. And I remember, because my vocals were so horrible at the time, because I had never practiced or tried to sing in a studio before, that it took a long time to punch in the vocals, line by line, getting each one so that it wasn't off key and that it was in time. And I learned a lot from that process, but I also learned that was not the studio that was going to have a hit record, because, it was mastered on VHS. And you just can't.
What?
Yeah, you can't do that if you're trying to be pro. Social music.